This is Alicia, Liz, and Ant, and we are Servant Decoded. Welcome back to our deep dive discussion of Servant Season 3, Episode 4, titled Ring. This episode is written by Laura Marks and was directed by Dylan Holmes Williams. How are you guys doing?
I'm doing pretty good. How are you?
What a great episode.
It really was. It was amazing.
It really was. I wasn't with it at first, but we got there. And boy, did we get there. Oh boy.
Yeah, this and Hive have been my two favorites so far. For different reasons, but
oh, for sure.
I'm really enjoying this season.
Yeah, this season is probably the best yet, I think.
I think so. There's so much. I feel like each episode is packed with so much in general, thematically,
very consistent.
Yeah, all sorts of things. It's been really cool and interesting to watch. What do you think made this one of y'all's favorite episodes?
The tension building. You know, last week we talked about the camera work. I think this week the sound really stood out. The use of sound added so much. And it was such a well choreographed episode.
For sure.
There were so many moving bits and parts, and the way that the choreography and the sound were used together to build the tension and to bring it to this boiling point. It was so cool. I was deeply invested as it, got revving. That was so good.
I agree. What do you love about it, Ant?
It felt really different. Like it felt like they I don't know. I mean, I know it didn't break the format, but it feels like it opened it up in a really weird and interesting feeling way. Because in the beginning it felt very airy and almost brighter. I mean, it's been brighter, but this felt like a little looser in terms of what's going on. It wasn't right into everything so intensely as usual, and then it just kept ramping up these little things. Well, we'll get there, but yeah, it culminated in a lot of things being not answered, but maybe pinpointed.
Yeah, no, I agree. There was a lot going on, a lot of things that I think, like you said, maybe revealed that we were getting closer to answers, or maybe some, different theories that have floated around. Maybe there's more evidence that points towards those things. So that's one of the things that I found exciting about it. The other thing that I really loved, one of my favorite things about Servant is, so I do think it's great when you have one or a small number of directors that work on a show through the whole series. I think I've seen that in some of my favorite shows.
Keeps it consistent.
Yeah, and it keeps it consistent, exactly. But one of the cool things about Servant not doing that is that we get these great directors and writers in there that sort of have a different take on things, or we see it through their eyes, even though we're still filtering through M. Night's, creation and the, where the show is heading in general. I really love seeing what the different directors bring to the table and how that progresses the story, and how they use their own talents to enhance what is already going on. I also like looking each season at how maybe the different, how did episode 4 this season look like episode 4 from last season? Were there any similarities, or is there any similarity in sort of the pattern of how the episodes progress through each season? And I do think there's some similarity there.
That's interesting, because we could look at not that we have to go do that now, but I guess you could look at each character episode, because usually there's one each season for everybody. So maybe those are I mean, it's all very consistent despite having so many people being involved.
Right. That's what I'm saying. And so for me, this one reminded me of Pizza in a way, which was episode 4 last season. And the thing that it reminded me of was more just the stylistic approach to it. One of the things I loved about Pizza is that it felt very farce-like, sort of had this doors slamming and people moving quickly, and this comedic thing that was happening that felt like a farce on stage. And I really loved that episode because of that. And while this one stylistically was darker and more tense, it still built the frenetic energy that I felt like we saw in season 2, episode 4, Pizza. This build of tension, this build of energy, this crescendo, moving towards something. And so I just thought it was interesting that we saw a similar type builds at the same time last season, even if it wasn't the same exact style, if that makes sense.
With Pizza, they were making the pizzas, like, set up the whole call that little, I guess that little ruse that they were pulling to try to find Leanne.
Right.
And now he's like making sandwiches for the neighborhood. So it's like going from like a personal endeavor to like feeding back into the community.
Toby re-enters, and we're then again addressing Toby being a doormat for the Turners and in getting them to do the things that they want him to do. And that's really addressed in this episode, right?
Oh, right. That's another mirror too. I didn't even think of it that way. And then that's also internalized too. Like he like risked himself going to the house. And now whatever's happened with Sylvie, like he's brought into chaos from outside as opposed to like
and he's brought Sylvia to this house.
So many inversions.
So I just think that's really cool. And I don't think it's an accident.
There's a contrast in Sean's character between 2-4 and 3-4. 2-4, he's acting on Dorothy's wishes to, trick Leanne, find Leanne. And this season he's acting benevolently. He and Leanne are really bonding and getting along. So it shows the development in Sean's character. And also Toby is less of a doormat, to a degree, and, bring a little more agency, at least when he stands up Leanne.
Sylvia speaks to him like he's, a doormat, bossing him around in a way that we saw, Sean and Dorothy and Julian doing previously. That's interesting too. All right, well, let's dive in from the beginning, and we're gonna talk our way through the episode and see where that takes us. And so, Liz, why don't you talk a little bit about what you felt like the theme of this episode was?
Well, again, what I really like about the titles of these episodes is that I think they're very telling about what we're going to see in the episode. There's the surface level explanation of Ring as relating to Sylvia's ring and the culmination of all that action in the end of the episode. But if you go deeper, what I read into it was the idea, there's a mental health term for action called repetition compulsion. When there's childhood trauma, survivors of childhood trauma, you often see them putting themselves exposing themselves to the same kinds of dangers or traumas in adulthood over and over again. And the idea is that they're trying to recreate history in order to get a different outcome and gain a sense of mastery over the situation. This time it'll be different. This time it'll have a happy ending, and I will have more power in what happens. I'm going to control this. I'm going to create my own happy ending. But unfortunately, it tends to just, lead to cyclical abuse. I find myself saying to clients, there's comfort in chaos, meaning that there's comfort in the familiar.
Right.
I can control, like, even though I'm not controlling it, like I control the situation by making it the same situation. Like, if that makes sense, like I'm familiar with it, so I have power, even if I don't.
Yeah, it's like I know how to do this. I know the steps to the dance.
Exactly.
As humans, we're drawn to the familiar, to what we know, and that's why people say, I married my father, or I married my mother.
Why do I feel like I keep dating the same person over and over? And I don't think this person is like my father. And then 10 years later, like, oh, wow.
Oh, wait a minute. Exactly.
Wait a minute. Damn it.
Something's not right.
That is my father.
Conversations with my therapist. That's a different show.
Oh, yeah.
But back to theme. All right. So childhood trauma, repetition compulsion, the whole thing of Leanne trying to be remothered and refamilied in a way that she wasn't as a child.
Yeah.
The second layer, or the part of this, is when I think of ring, I thought of a boxing ring or a fighting ring, because there's so many warring wants and needs throughout the episode between characters. Primarily Leanne versus Dorothy, but we see Dorothy versus Sean versus everyone. The kitchen becomes a war zone, but a lot of just warring factions throughout. Then I also thought about ring symbolizing commitment, typically to a relationship or family. What Leanne is trying to create and maintain throughout the episode. She's trying to get Dorothy to commit to this role as mother, traditional mother in the house, in the family. The stay-at-home mom that is there, constantly present, taking care of her children. And then the idea of a circle of protection, insiders versus outsiders. So a lot of layers in the title thing that I found applicable throughout the episode.
Absolutely. I love all of that. And I think you're absolutely right. It was really cool, interesting to see Leanne begin opening up to Dorothy a little bit too about her mother and her experience with her mother.
Oh yeah. And Dorothy, her response, in that she does this wonderful job of being maternal and loving and supportive, but then on a dime, she, throughout the episode, she's switching from mother to boss to friend to adversary, and then cycling through them all over again.
Right.
She's very maternal and warm and supportive towards Leanne, and then Sean says, "I need you," and Dorothy runs off. And then she gets agitated with Leanne when Leanne's trying to tell her how to parent Jericho. And she says, "I don't need you to tell me how to take care of my baby." And then 2 minutes later, "Hey, still friends?" And then, she's off again. And yeah.
The other thing that I thought though was interesting is, even though it is very frenetic and confusing for Leanne, I think it's also that way because Leanne doesn't necessarily understand or accept that women have many different roles. And so that's not when she has to cut it's like you can see it from both perspectives. From one side, you can feel how sad it is for Leanne that she's clearly yearning so much for a mother and for Dorothy to treat her in that way. And it's sad when Dorothy kind of schleps that off and goes to do whatever needs to be done. You're just like, oh, poor Leanne. But at the same time, that's also life. And Leanne doesn't really get that either.
Right.
So yeah, I mean, I think that it's also like you said, there are so many levels. On a base level, it looks like looking inside of any home, and maybe any kind of encounter you might see between a young woman and a teenage, a teenager and her mother. And then on the other hand, you're going, oh gosh, this woman has no idea that in spreading herself so thin or trying to be everything to everybody, she's not really fully committing to any of those roles.
Well, and that's one of the fights that's going on in the episode is Dorothy and her ideas of motherhood, or motherhood versus work.
Yeah. And can we do it all and have it all? And what's enough? And isn't that the question? Aunt, what were your thoughts on that?
I just had a bit of a crisis in my brain, but no, if I could jump to the end a little bit.
Sure.
No, it's interesting that like she has all these ideas of like what Dorothy should be as a mother, and like how she's like, be home and like take care of these things. And she is home and she does take care of the things when it benefits her, like at an artificial level, like, oh, look at my baby, or like we're having this event, or like, oh, look, he's eating, or like, he likes food like Sean does, like all these like little ornamental nonsenses.
The Instagram moments.
Exactly. And then she goes out to work, and then she's humbled by being embarrassed. And then she comes home and she's like, you know, lactating or had been. And Leanne's like, oh, I'm so glad you're home. You can feed him if you want. I have him ready. Like, get up there.
And
And like you wanted to be a
locks
mother,
her
now
in.
you're a mother. Like,
Well, yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I also looked at that as her going, like, I know this was embarrassing, but
mm,
I kept him awake. So this thing that embarrassed you here, this is appropriate and right.
it's a
So
teachable moment almost. Not maybe
yeah,
in the best way, but it's like, you know, like this is what it is. Even
right.
though work
Yeah,
is also important, I guess Leanne doesn't maybe grasp that, but like,
we do need.
right.
Well, and look how miserable Dorothy looks.
And also
You know,
don't cross me.
Leanne shuts that childproof gate, you know, and the families, and Sean and Julian are on one side, and Dorothy's got Jericho on the other, and she's headed upstairs to the nursery to breastfeed Jericho, and she looks absolutely miserable.
Oh, that ending,
And
that
then
whole sequence was in. Wow. Yeah.
that ending monologue, yeah, you know, why isn't enough? Why isn't it enough? I thought it would be enough just to have Jericho, but something's missing, and what's wrong with me?
I love just how well, and you know, we'll I guess in a little bit we'll get to that in more detail, but I also love how this show, you know, one minute you're dealing with the supernatural and the potential or potentially supernatural and the fantastical and stuff like that, but in the next moment you are watching a very real authentic scene, you know. I
Yeah.
mean, who I know there's so many people out there, and whether it's motherhood or work or whatever it is, they
Yeah.
go, I thought this would be enough. I thought this is what I wanted and that this would be enough. Why am I still not happy?
Even the way that's filmed, though, like they have it filmed, like they press through the bars of the crib, like she's in jail, and they're
Oh
both in jail,
yeah.
like they're both like locked in this
Yeah.
situation.
Imprisoned.
That's pretty surface, but I had noticed that too.
Yeah. Well, I think that whole
I-
ending sequence was meant to feel like
hmm
they were imprisoned in this house, but we'll get there. Okay. So
Oh, I wanted to point out that throughout the episode, we get a lot of normal talk. You know, this is what normal girls wear at the beginning.
yes, that's a good, yeah.
When
I just gotta say too, I loved the way Lauren said that line. I don't know why. There was just something about the way she said it that felt so like condescending, but also like I got it. Like her tone. I was like, you know, you can get, you know, she's like, honey, this is, you know, this is what normal girls
Lauren is a
wear. Like
master.
it's okay. You know, I just loved the delivery.
What Lauren Ambrose is doing with this character, with her her faces and her ticks and her line deliveries, it's a masterclass.
It really is.
And over the top, but not too over. It's just perfect.
She walks that line beautifully.
Yeah, there's smoldering. Throughout the episode, Leanne is constantly asking Dorothy, "Why are you leaving? Or are you leaving? Or when are you coming back?" And also throughout the episode, there's all the normal talk. One of the normals being when Dorothy's off to work and Leanne is, you know, again, do you have to go? Why can't you stay here? And Dorothy says, I know that you came from a more traditional household where the mother stayed home, but this is normal that mothers go off work. Just going back to that point.
Yeah, I forgot about that one too. That's yeah. Yeah. She's trying to teach Leanne. Or I think she believes that she, I mean, she is.
And Leanne is trying too, really.
Yeah.
Doing it, you know.
That's the warring, the fighting. They each want the other to be something that they're not, and that they're not going to be, or that they don't want to be.
Yeah.
Dorothy is encouraging Leanne to grow up and to have a normal life. And Leanne wants Dorothy to stay at home and be a normal mom. And Leanne doesn't want to grow up, and Dorothy doesn't want to stay home and just be a mom. So
she does want to grow. Yeah.
No, go ahead.
I think she does want to grow up a little bit. Like she wants so badly to be normal, but then everything else, like all of these like outside factors, like tell her not to be. Like that the baby gate guy.
Well,
Like
think about,
she's
okay,
confronted with that, and then she's like wearing the jumper or whatever it is, and then she goes to change. She's like, no, it's better that I'm like
well,
unseeable.
I think that this is I wanted to circle back to the beginning and talk
Hmm.
about some of the other stuff at the beginning, but
There's
this
a lot
ties
there,
into
yeah.
that too, is this, this song by this Vivian Dale singer.
Hmm.
And we know that this was written specifically for the show,
Hmm.
and is the same performer that did the song at the beginning of Love Shack in season 2.
Hmm.
And she talked about sort of Leanne's journey and what this song represents. And
Hmm.
can we talk a little bit more about that? I know that we all read that article, but the more of the verbiage isn't coming to me at the moment. So I thought maybe one of you guys could speak on more specifically on what she said, because I think it directly, it really is very true to what's happening with Leanne right now.
Hmm.
Well, she talks about the process of growing up into womanhood and femininity and what it means to start exploring those more adult themes of love and lust and growing into your body and things that Leanne is processing. When I say that Leanne wants to stay a child, I'm speaking more to, if she's a child, she doesn't have to leave the Turner home. And while the Turners are encouraging her to, find her wings and leave the nest, that's what Leanne is fighting against. But we do see Leanne exploring what it is to be a sexual being and a woman,
Hmm.
and trying on the engagement ring, or trying on the ring as an engagement ring, and playing around with, if I become a woman, a grown woman, does that make me a slut? As we to her monologue to Aunt Josephine after being hit on by creepy safety guy.
Right.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And it's this, this thing of like, if I want to be seen a certain way.
And then the vulnerability of that.
Right, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I definitely love, and I do think that song really evokes that feeling, that sensuality in a really beautiful way. And what an exciting start to the episode, because we've now gone into a sort of new room.
Hmm.
It's
I was really excited about this.
Yeah.
Something that, Alicia, you've been talking about what for the past 2 seasons?
Yes.
1.5
We're
seasons?
finally getting there.
What's behind that door? I think I know what's
behind
behind
the door.
Something to do with the cult, and then we got to see
The room. We're getting to see what's in the room. No, but I know we talked last year when we were, when there's been a lot of talk about the house, of course. I think most fans know this, the house, and we get to see more rooms each season, and it grows and expands, and what's behind this door and what's behind that door. And that we've talked about in our first episode or two about how the outside is coming in, and so that backyard park feels like an extension of the house in a way. So I totally did not expect for us to just casually walk into that room at the
No.
beginning of this episode. So that was really like surprising and exciting. And one of the theories that we had discussed last season, that I kind of, we were talking about what could possibly be behind that door. And I believe I think it's in Spaceman in season 2, and she's trying to sort of learn more about them. We get to see the video, and you see them in this room that kind of feels musty and dusty, and the way the light's coming in through these 2 windows, and we see them going through their ritual. The floor feels unfinished, and I remember we were talking about what that could be, and it could be a barn, but I remember saying at the time that it looked like it could also be an attic, that it looked like it could be at the top of a house of some kind, in some way. And I suggested that perhaps all of this sort of, why is the water running in this room? And, you know, that these cult members or this force is working and coming in through the house, and that they were not alone in this house and people were moving through there. And what if behind that door up there, that was a room that they were using, and perhaps that video we saw was indeed what was behind the door. And I don't know that I'm right, although maybe I am, but I know there are differences in the room, you know, but there's also a lot of similarities, like in the structure of the room and in the two windows and in the sort of lighting in there and the floor and the way it's unfinished. And so I just thought that looked real similar, and I was very excited about that.
Yeah.
So when you fell off your chair, did the notebook fall with you?
I was on my bed watching.
Did the pen go flying in the air, or did you keep it in your
The
hand?
pen might have gone flying.
Hey.
It might have slid off its perch. I'm such a dork. I'm such a nerd. I was so excited, and then when I compared the two pictures, I was like, okay, I guess they're not exactly the same, but I mean, they have a really similar quality to them. And so somebody on Reddit who also liked my idea, and I would just like to say thank you to whoever that was, suggested that perhaps the place has burned down. Perhaps it is the same room. It's just different versions of that room. And I do think that, you know, that's a possibility. So,
or some timey-wimey stuff.
Time traveling something. Because you know, time is all wonky and we don't know why yet. So yeah.
I'm the dummy that was writing, oh, the attic looks so different in the daytime. Wait, why does the attic suddenly overlook the backyard and not the street? Are we in a different room?
Also, here's a punching bag. Yeah.
And a bar. Oh, they turned it into a workout room.
And when did that happen too? Because I'm pretty sure there was a padlock on that. Somebody mentioned there was a padlock on that before.
Yeah.
So
that's right.
Yeah.
Eerie vibes. But yeah, it took me a good few minutes to process. We're not in the attic anymore. We're in that room.
Yes.
Oh, and was there any talk about the room where Roscoe was kept when he was with the cult for those, 4 days, 2 days?
That's a great point. And that also, we talked about that then. Yeah. That perhaps it was there. You're right. Oh my God, I can't even, you're right. We talked about that. I'm now remembering.
I forgot about that too.
I wonder if he talked about the room at all, because I know he was going through another.
I'm gonna go back and look. I'm gonna listen now.
I don't think it was very specific that way.
But he did say that he didn't go anywhere. Remember?
Right.
And that's what also fueled that theory for us, was that he said he didn't go anywhere. And I was like, well, what if he really didn't? What if he was right upstairs behind that door?
Exactly.
Yeah.
How do we, I mean, everybody's distracted or whatever, but it's amazing that nobody would notice these things. No, I mean, it's written that way by design for some purpose, but that's interesting. Unless they're like, nobody's like disappearing physically. I don't know if they're like phasing through.
Right. Yeah.
Unless it's like Leanne said, they can just get in without you realizing it. Whatever that's supposed to mean.
You can walk behind the walls. You know, they're trapped through doors and
and we know locks aren't. So
there's cupboards that lead to access between walls, so people could easily be moving, you know, within the house, but not in plain sight.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And I feel like those things are meant to like get us thinking, like that's laying the groundwork for that to be happening.
I think so.
Yeah.
They've got a corpse in their walls.
Right.
And
maybe two.
Discovered.
Exactly.
Maybe two.
I think maybe more than two.
Because the one they show in the trailer, I don't think is Aunt Josephine. Unless I'm being like real picky. Like it seems like it's a different positioning. Unless it's just the angle of the camera.
Well, I think we've all agreed that we're not sure. It's not.
Yeah.
We don't know.
Because I looked at it again today, and it's very it's like similar enough that I could like accept it, but also I don't know.
Yeah, but I wouldn't be surprised. I think
I'm not sure what that would be.
Enough hinting at stuff behind the walls that I definitely don't think that that's the only corpse there or the only reason that we've been able to see that people can move within those walls. So yeah.
I thought the corpse looked different in this
Yeah.
episode. It's not
No,
really
For sure.
Mhm.
And
Little
when you
bit.
see Leanne pound on the wall, you see part of the ceiling dust fall down on the
I thought it was like,
hall.
okay, I saw that more as the corpse looked like it was ashing.
That's
I-
kind of what it looked like flaking apart.
And
Yeah.
well, the corpse is black,
Mhm.
and what you see fall from above is a light brown dusting. If you go back and look, it really does look like it's the house kind of coming apart.
Could be the house, like,
Could
like
be.
dust between the, or
Yeah.
like, insulation or something.
Sure. The room where Leanne and Dorothy are working out, you can see the cracks in the concrete.
Right.
Mhm.
More evidence of the house really crumbling, falling apart.
We have this moment where Leanne looks out the window and we have the homeless hipsters on the lawn.
Mm.
I find this a little interesting that suddenly like the backyard is also where these homeless
It's a
people have
it's a pretty
decided.
active park, like,
Yeah.
It's a backyard / neighborhood park.
Yeah.
But we see that heart problem guy is sitting in a tent with a homeless youth we haven't seen before, and across from them are, I call them Baldy and Brady.
sure.
And so heart guy points out, he notices Leanne in the window and points it out to Baldy and Brady, and then they look up at Leanne. So it looks like they've been parked there waiting for Leanne to make an appearance.
Yeah.
That they're on lookout.
Also, her backpack says Lou. I know last episode we were talking about irony of it potentially saying LOL. But yeah, I don't know. So we could call her Lou.
That might be nicer than Baldy. A little kinder.
Do you feel like they're sitting there and waiting, or do you feel like they are? Yeah. What do you think their purpose is for sitting outside their window?
I mean, I just said that I think that they're parked there on Leanne lookout duty. What do you think, Anne?
It feels different now, which kind of, I don't know how I feel about that, but it doesn't seem, I mean, I know Leanne is worried, but it doesn't seem as menacing as it previously felt for some reason.
No, it doesn't.
Sure.
Like, if I don't know, before it seemed so much more of like attention, but now I guess that we're getting to know these people ever so vaguely. It almost seems like they want her help, but I don't know if that's, I don't know if that's any valid, or it's just how I'm like feeling about it because of how, but I mean, it's filmed a way to feel a certain way, so perhaps there's something to it.
Yeah, I agree.
But then what does that mean?
I think we're all on the same page. You escaped and you thwarted Aunt Josephine, the big bad. So will you be our leader? Oh,
but no.
Or you've successfully removed yourself from this cult and we would like to do the same. Can you help us?
Yeah.
Well, why not be direct?
Why not be direct?
That's the only thing that seems suspicious outside of it being, a written television show. I always keep that in mind.
One could argue that they are, and well, to some
that's what
extent, when he comes up to her afterwards, after Dorothy leaves, and she's outside, and he says, "I just want to talk to you."
Yeah, but that could mean anything. You could also say, "Help me," or "How did this?" or "Who are these people that are whatever?" Or like.
Very good point.
I mean. Yeah. Again, it's just
something that's more revealing.
A little direct. I mean, they're being willfully obtuse with a lot of stuff this season.
One could argue that his choice of I just want to talk to you would indicate I mean you no harm.
Right.
I just want to talk to you.
Me being a suspicious person, that would indicate I mean for you to think I mean you no harm. So that could be anything.
Sure. And something worth pointing out that I think we listened to this multiple times before we started, so I think we're on the same page, that when this guy in the last episode was interviewed on camera, he sounded quite American. He didn't really have, he didn't have like an American accent, like regionally, maybe even almost California-esque. But when he says, I just want to talk to you, he sounds, maybe a little closer to British. Because the way that he drops it, he says, I just want to talk to you. Like, the way that he says it is very.
There's a little bit of an inflection that seems kind of different.
Yeah. He doesn't sound the same. It sounds like there's a different accent there, and like, yeah, a different inflection and accent. So I'm wondering if that's purposeful, and if so, why? So I don't know. That was just something that stood out to me, that I was like,
Maybe he thinks that if he sounds British, he'll be less threatening.
Some people do think this.
Or that was an additional way to reveal that, like, he wasn't who he seemed to be.
But like, I don't know. There's really no evidence for people being able to, like.
If
I'm not sure what that would indicate.
Okay, this group of people is presenting that we are homeless kids in the park, and this is our experience. But if that's not the case, if there's another reason for them being there, if they're not really who they're presenting themselves as being, then perhaps that's why when he tries to get Leanne to talk to him,
just like another layer of, okay.
Yeah, suddenly he's using his normal voice.
Yeah,
he's dropping the act.
Well, she doesn't seem to know them, so that wouldn't indicate anything to her specifically. But maybe it's just like, yeah.
And the other thing that I just wanted to mention too is that, when we saw shots of the cult, the group, people from the cult in the past, when they were together in a group, not individually, they would have their head tilted and they looked like zombies, the way that they walked and that they moved and stuff like that. And this group is not presenting that way. So, perhaps it's another clue that this group of kids really is not part of the cult in any way, or if they are, they're looking for a way out as well.
I think it would indicate maybe that they haven't been with the cult as long, so they're not as indoctrinated.
That could be true. Let's talk briefly about, I don't know if we need to spend too much time talking about the Vivian Dale moment, but maybe we do.
I think
interesting what she said.
Yeah, I think I found something that resolves that for me at least, but it's still interesting.
Well, I know it was postulated, like, how could this have occurred, where if this Vivian Dale died so young, how would Dorothy have seen her? Because I know there's a lot of chatter about, what's going on with Dorothy. And we've even talked about the way that they speak, and the way that the Turners speak even makes it sound like they're from a different time period, a different time frame, when Sean says, don't forget that she's staff, back in season 1, and we've heard Dorothy say things like be a dear, and just different phrases that she used that aren't super modern. So I do think that there's certainly a timelessness or an element of us going, okay, is this somebody who's really of this time? So this could be another clue. She did mention that that Vivian Dale died young, and she saw her perform on the Lower East Side and thought it was amazing how she turned all of her pain into power. So really, I think probably symbolic too of just what Dorothy wishes that she could do. Turning her own pain into power. I think it's possible that, Dorothy saw her. Maybe she saw her with her mother. Maybe that's a memory that Dorothy has. And
that's
so
what I was getting
that's
at.
Why she saw her, and how that could work out. But yeah, so I just wanted to address that, since I know
just a
with some
curious little thing
online about that. Yeah.
And the phrase turning pain to power, that gets there's a ripple effect through the episode. The mural, your voice is your power. When Dorothy and Leanne are doing their dance class, Dorothy says, extend your arm, let the power run through your fingertips. There's a lot of talk of that.
Yeah.
Using your power and how to do that. Dorothy, when she's going to her meeting, sometimes you just have to step up and ask for what you want, and then she gets it.
Yeah, a lot of this episode was a really interesting sort of study of the relationship between Dorothy and Leanne. What Dorothy is teaching Leanne, and is Leanne teaching Dorothy anything, and
like the consistent shifting of power and control. or
And what was
influence at least.
creepy safety guy?
Creepy safety guy.
So, things like this.
Something we were talking about when he visits. I thought interesting, ironic that Dorothy's pulled away from her maternal moment with Leanne because the Turners are child-proofing the house for Jericho. That Dorothy's attention is switched from being maternal towards Leanne to caring for her real child, quote unquote, Jericho. But also ironic that, and sad that the Turners are childproofing the home for Jericho when they should be protecting the outside to keep Leanne safe. You could argue they did that by putting the cameras up, in Hive.
Interesting,
but just thought that was kind of sad. They're childproofing the inside for Jericho when it should be the outside.
It's interesting that they didn't even go back to the cameras yet, other than that one episode so far.
I agree. Right. That's a good point.
Creepy childhood safety guy. He's going through the house mentioning danger areas, and there's a lot of numbers. He talks about 15, 2, and 100 when he's going through the statistics of dangerous objects and how many children are killed every year by falling armoires and whatever. So I tried to look up 15 to 100 symbolism. Something I found was one biblical, I don't know what it's called, area verse. It's 15 2. The quote is, "The Lord is my strength and my song, and he has become my salvation. This is my God, I will praise him, my Father's God, and I will exalt him." That made me think of the homeless in the end, looking up at Leanne as a savior. He has become, it's my strength, my song. We think about the song that Leanne is dancing to, and my salvation. This is my God, I will praise him, and I will exalt him. They're watching Leanne up in the attic with kind of a beatific look on their face. So,
yeah.
Just a little thing to toss in.
Yeah. No, I think that's great.
And another thing about this safety man being so forward with Leanne and, improperly so, is that meant to, highlight that there are also dangers in the world for her in general, outside of her specific fears? I don't think he's of the cult. I think it might just be the fact of her having, the little progress of, wearing the exercise outfit and then having to be shamed back into her usual. But, also, there was a lot of time on that I thought was interesting.
Okay, another thing that I noticed, and this might speak to that a little bit more, was the moment when they were all at the stair last season, when we were talking about some of the symbolism of the house and stuff like that. We talked about how when you look up at those stairs, it's all very white and ascending, as though we maybe are going up towards heaven, but when you look down from the top of the stairs, everything's very dark, so we could say that represents more hell, sin, whatever. Okay. So one of the things that I noticed was that we kept having this shot. So the shot would look up at Leanne with the baby and it was all white and heavenly. And then when we would look down, it would be dark. And this guy, the way that his eyebrows were in his face, when he would look up from that place and the angle, it did look very sort of evil in a way. And so I thought it could also have been used to represent just sort of the darkness and the evils that are awaiting, and he represents that idea of there's evil, there's darkness in the world that you can't escape. And so, it could have just been symbolic of his presence, could have been symbolic of that, based on the way, his placement in some of these shots and stuff like that.
Yeah, it could be the way that Leanne views it. He's not just some creepy guy creeping on her. He's, a demon.
Yeah.
Trying to tempt her into hell.
Right.
And that she talks about sin when she's speaking to to Aunt Josephine. Is it my fault? I really like that point, Aunt, about her, changing out of the exercise clothes, that made me look like slut.
Right.
Putting on her more proper outfit. I looked at it as it was just meant to add to the chaos that was building. Of all the people in the house, how they're revving Leanne up.
It's just one more thing.
And also, where's the real danger?
See, that is a danger too. I just didn't feel that way about him. Like, it doesn't seem like...
just in the sense of like, all of the chaos and the potential dangers makes it harder for her to identify where the real danger is.
Right. Okay.
That's what I mean.
Yeah. No, for sure. We're on the same page.
And I think of all the people that came into the house in this episode that created this growing tension and paranoia in Leanne, none of them were presented real danger.
No.
Leanne is the one that, is the most dangerous.
I want to just sidebar for a second here. Two things. One, I do think it was interesting how Leanne mentioned that as long as she was there, nothing would happen to Jericho. As long as she was there, nothing would happen to Sean. Interestingly, she never says, as long as I'm here, nothing will happen to you, Dorothy.
Oh, that's true.
Was that last episode or this episode where she says Sean's going to be a star?
That was last episode.
That was last episode. I meant to comment on that last time too, but that's a whole other thing we should get into at another time.
So I thought that was just an interesting observation I had, that she's clearly protecting Sean and Jericho, but she never mentions protecting Dorothy. And then also another thing, and Liz, I want to get your thought on this. And I had mentioned this to Aunt just like immediately after the episode, because I just thought this, or while I was watching it. When they were in the living room, it did not look to me like she was actually breastfeeding Jericho.
No, I wondered about that too.
Okay. I just wanted to know if anybody else saw that in the way that I did.
Leanne says, we need to feed him. He's hungry.
Yes.
Hold on a second. Okay.
And you look at it.
She didn't take that bra off.
She didn't take the bra off. She didn't even pull it down. And we saw the bra previously, and it's not like one that opens.
And it's tight enough that if you pull it up, you would see that, I think. Right? Yeah. But she does like feel herself to like get it to.
Yeah. But like if you really look at it, it looks like that child is feeding over her bra.
Well, no wonder she's not getting any milk.
Exactly.
And then she doesn't drink the water.
Yeah, Leanne says, I don't think he's getting anything.
Well, he's not on your boobie.
See, is that a mistake, or is that? I don't
know. That's why I wanted to bring it up.
Because it seems like
I wonder if that's one of those robot glitch moments. Local humans,
right?
I just don't understand why they would do that.
And they even have a conversation about it, right? Yeah, like she's like, he's not getting it, and then she's like,
it's focused on, and then she says, drink more.
And she's like, oh well, it's because you're not keeping him on schedule, and you need to drink this. And she's like, I don't need to drink it.
I wonder if that was purposeful. Like local humans, we need to feel the sand in our shoes. A glitch.
I think it could be. I think it could be another one of those moments that will be proof that, something wackadoodle's going on.
Behaving like they think normal people do, but it's off.
Like she thinks she's feeding him, but she's not.
Right.
Yeah. And then you also, well, I guess this doesn't really matter, but I also found it interesting when Sylvia guessed, what is he's really cute. What is he? 18 months. And then Sean says, no, he's 9 months. And she's just big for his age. And then Dan's like, no, he's perfect. And Sylvia's like, what the f is going on here?
Yeah. It's very good.
But what? Now, so is that another one of those weird things? Or is it just the fact that like that baby isn't Jericho and that's the point?
He died in the summer and it's now March. Be generous and say summer was September, right?
Sure, you could be, could still be hot.
How old was he when he passed? 2 months?
3 months?
3
months? So let's say he was born in
Was he born in June or July? We know the passcode
June.
is 0603, which made me
So
assume.
it's probably
Right.
June.
So that was my assumption that was his birthday.
So if he was born in June, then that would make him 9 months. Yeah, I thought Sylvia's comment was just to show she doesn't care. It's
Or
like,
that
oh,
she just doesn't know.
yeah, like, nice baby. What is he, 5?
But again, like, why would you even comment on a baby's age like that? If that, like, I'm not good with that because I don't, I didn't birth any babies myself, and and
Sometimes it's hard to
for
tell.
me, the whole sort of like 6 month, 18 month, 9 month, 24, that all
It's
of that
so specific.
my head hurt.
Yeah.
I wouldn't ask that. I would just say, how old is your baby?
Right.
I wouldn't guess.
I
wouldn't assume that I would guess it right.
No.
I just thought she was trying to further ingratiate herself to Sean by taking an interest.
And okay, so if it's a fake baby, meaning it's a real baby, but we know it's not Jericho.
Right.
Right. Now, she could have brought in a baby that was older than Jericho, but you couldn't really tell at the time. But now, because he's actually aging, because time goes, you know what I mean? Does that make sense?
Right.
And that,
like, oh, maybe we didn't notice too much of a difference between a baby being like, 5 months and 9 months, but now that this actual baby is closer to 18 months, it doesn't really look like a 9-month baby would, or a year-old baby. I don't know.
Right.
And I think an 18-month baby would look a lot older than
older. We'd be walking
for sure. Yeah. I mean, yeah.
Or almost walking or whatever. Yeah.
I think that's more of the
meant to show her
idiocy. Quickly on his feet, and then Leanne, he's perfect. Just like, shut up, stop asking questions.
Like, don't be like commenting on my family or whatever. Maybe this means nothing, but I'm going back through again to closer to the end of the episode, and then baby safety man has a friend for a second, and then he disappears. Where does this man go? There's a guy with him.
Yeah, and then he takes off.
And then he's not there in the beginning, and then he's there, and then we don't see him again.
Sean sends him off.
I guess so.
It'll be overtime, and Sean's like, I don't care, get him out. I'm busy.
Oh, okay. I just thought that was okay.
Another thing that I thought was during that same scene where Dorothy is maybe fake feeding Jericho.
Right.
That's also the scene where she says that it's like she's invisible.
Oh, I missed that.
Yeah, she's watching Isabel do the gala, this party that she used to. She said, I've done this the last 8 years. This is so hurtful. It's like I'm invisible.
That's right.
That's interesting too, because she's not able to feed the baby, and then when she's visible on the news back where she wants to be, certainly she has milk.
Yeah.
Like now you're seeing.
Yeah.
Very mean. Very.
Yeah. She wears a lot of turquoise in this episode. There's a lot of turquoise.
Suit. That's such a good suit.
Oh, it's beautiful. Her wardrobe on this show is just so beautiful. I just feel like she's so gorgeous and classy, and I love but I also noticed that I feel like a lot of times her suits and her dresses, and I think I've even mentioned this before, they oftentimes look like things in the house, like the wallpaper or tapestry or bedspreads. And it made me think more and more about the fact that like the house is this character, and Leanne is connected to the house, but so is Dorothy. Dorothy is of this house as well. And perhaps that's really, really plays into this mystery of the house. She's dressed like her and the house both have these prints, and they do look like.
They do it with Leanne too. When she's laying on the floor with the record, she's got the brown and white, and the rug is almost the same color. Also, just as a fun aside, I'm looking at some stills right now, and this man put his initials in the scene. She's got like blocks on the floor next to the record player, and it's MNS3. Go to bed. Well, you gotta be so. Nobody's gonna see
seriously.
that. But I saw. Yeah, it's like. I mean, I'm just looking just for the. Like, come on, buddy.
3. That's funny. That's good.
I don't know what to
catch.
Yeah.
something I noticed was that Dorothy and Leanne seem to be dressing alike in this episode.
Yes.
You know, at one point they're both wearing the pink leggings.
Yep.
And I want to say that at one point they're both wearing mauve or
Yeah, the pants match. It's like a purple. Yeah.
Except that like
The shirt.
Leanne's were
It's the shirt and
workout,
pants.
casual,
Right.
and Dorothy's were like the professional version. But yeah, they mirrored each other.
And I thought they were similar in another scene as well.
Maybe
some sort of mauve outfit, but
I thought that too. Maybe this doesn't matter, but Sean and Leanne match too with the blue, and then Dorothy matches the purple with the creepy man. I don't know if that's anything, but that's kind of an obvious thing too for some reason.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah.
Well, we've talked about how blue has been Sean's color before, right?
Right.
Or it's his
Well, it wasn't.
color.
Blue
Black.
was always like Julian. Sean hasn't worn blue until this season.
Right. That blue is his color this season.
Yeah.
And Leanne has been bonding with Sean and Dorothy, so it makes sense that she'd be matching them.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Now, I know that turquoise has been showing up a lot. And so it says that, and I think we talked about turquoise.
I'm sure we
recently, but wisdom, tranquility, protection, good. So, you know, she goes into this meeting, right? Wisdom, hopeful. Creativity. It says it's also, you know, represents creativity and good luck. So I like that.
I want to talk about, I think this comes next. Toby brings Sylvia over to, you know, meet Sean. Doesn't go very well.
Yes. This is a good time to start talking about Sylvia. I agree. Okay.
I thought it was interesting that, you know, after Sylvia leaves, after her very aggressive, you know, push, Sean is talking to Leanne, like, in a very kind of like fun dad way. Very paternal, but also like the fun dad. Like, you can help me make candy. It'll be fun. Kind of placating her.
It's really interesting that you bring that up, because I did find myself wondering, like, what is going on with their dynamic? You know, because she said yes, chef. She referred to him as chef.
Yeah, I caught that too.
It's how like a little girl would behave with her father, and vice versa.
I can see that. That makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah. Do you know how to make candy? It'll be fun.
The hook. Just saying, y'all.
Oh yeah.
The hook.
Well, yeah.
I was just looking at that now, actually. Yeah.
When Sean goes upstairs to talk to Dorothy, and you know, Dorothy's like, I got the job, I'm so excited, and Sean's like, but no, I need Leanne to cook tomorrow, and Dorothy reminds him that she can just do her job and watch the baby. Did you guys see that Sean seemed to go into a fugue state when Dorothy's saying Leanne can't cook? And it's like he pauses and kind of stares off into space for a minute.
Let's see. To me, it reads as he's like, you know, in his mind, he's going, well, I really wanted to use it. Also, he's taught Leanne quite a bit. So I think, like, selfishly, he's put time into her and he trusts her. And so I think that he doesn't want to not use her, but at the same time, maybe he knows that Dorothy's right.
Yeah,
she is right. It's like, this is the nanny. She's supposed to be watching the baby, so Dorothy can do this. She's right. You know, so I think on one hand, he's disappointed and he wants to be able to use Leanne, but I think he's also probably in his mind, he knows that Leanne wants to do it and it's going to upset Leanne.
That's what I was thinking. That it was really about not wanting to upset Leanne.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Want to do it. And not out of fear, out of love. Or, you know, being a nice guy.
Yeah.
The bond they have.
So, you know, after that, we see Dorothy. She tells Leanne, you're going to have to take care of Jericho. Which, of course, upsets her. And while she's getting ready, Leanne pulls shirt as she's buttoning her buttons. It's quite an aggressive move.
Oh yeah, it's such a subtle way of like, no, this is my, you know, and I'm in the power for him.
Yeah, and I definitely, it's definitely exhibiting her taking the power of that scene. And But I also think that Leanne has this habit of taking on the personality traits of whoever she's talking to in a way that she thinks will help her get what she wants, maybe. And I think we maybe even talked about this a little last week or the week before, where I was talking about like she's trying on different personalities like a teenager might do.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or she knows what people respond to, maybe.
Right. Yeah.
Well, and it's also a common trait with children that have grown up in chaotic and or abusive households. It's a survival mechanism, to read the room and to match the energy of the person that you're interacting with. Yeah.
Very interesting.
Well put.
Yeah. And she knows if she acts that way with Dorothy, that Dorothy will.
You can get results or just, succumb to the moment.
And Dorothy has just lectured her on sometimes you have to just get up there and
do it.
Ask for what you want.
Right.
I want you home.
And you mentioned earlier about, the fighting and boxing ring being another layer of, what it means to be, on the title. So that's another example of that, both, sparring verbally, but also physically in a way in that scene.
Yeah. Yeah. Pulling her towards her.
Yeah.
Stay close.
Like,
come
face
close
me.
Stay close.
Yeah.
And, power is mentioned multiple times in this episode. So, who do you think has the power? Do you think that Leanne has the power here in this scene, in this episode? What are your thoughts on the power where it sits currently?
It's a shifting thing, I think, because everybody wants everybody protected, and everyone also wants what they want. So it's hard to know where it actually begins and ends. I guess it's either very shifting or it's like.
I think that Dorothy thought that she had the power. And
right.
I think that Dorothy's realizing that she doesn't have as much power as she thought she did.
No.
And then by the end of the episode, that's what we're seeing. We're seeing her have that realization.
She is, but she's.
Oh my God, I don't have power.
But it's like she doesn't really understand where it's coming from. It's like, I don't know. I mean, it's baffling that you wouldn't put it together by now, but the thing with the bees and, ruining that whole event and now this and being embarrassed and of course she'll probably go back, but maybe not being able to go back right away because of how that happened on live television.
Do you think that the lactating was another one of those things that was perhaps caused by Leanne?
Oh, Leanne for sure did that. Well, at least in my mind, I'm pretty sure.
I thought so. Yeah.
Remember, you're a mother and where you should be. How dare you go to work and leave your situation?
Right.
But that's what but then she comes to break down. I'm like, oh, I've never, I just wanted to have this one. She keeps saying that, oh, I just wanted to have this event. And then now it's oh, I just wanted to be back doing what I was meant to do or what I feel like I was meant to do. And I can't even have that. But she's not connecting that Leanne is taking it from her.
Yeah, I think what was so brilliant about this episode when I was talking about the sound, when we first see the glitch, when we first see Dorothy kind of seem to lose it on air, we're hearing Jericho crying. And then when Julian plays the footage over for Sean to see what happens and we see the whole scene play out fully, we hear a baby crying in the background who is there on the scene.
But when you first see it, it looks like a glitch. That moment looks like one of Dorothy's fugue states.
I also wonder if Dorothy didn't send out some energy ball that, disrupted a baby, made a baby cry, that made Dorothy start to lactate.
Oh, there you go. What is everything with the plausible deniability? That's what it is. Sometimes they say when women hear a baby cry, it can trigger, right? So they're just.
So initially, we don't see that. We don't see that happened. So did that really happen? Did it not happen?
They're just seeing the confusion, like the hive falling into the chimney, and
Right. Yeah.
It seems so Leanne's able to disrupt with energy. She causes birds to freak out. She causes bees to freak out.
Right.
And
but everything
telekinesis type energy, would this be like a remote viewing type of a situation?
Like telekinesis or like an energy push that causes this baby on the scene to start crying, which affects Dorothy.
That's so it's both. It's a natural reaction, and it's also I did this cosmically, or however you want to put that.
Exactly.
Oh boy.
I thought it was so cool that Jericho's crying in the scene when we first see it happen. When we see it happen in real time, as Leanne's watching the TV, so we don't catch that that's what happened, and we also don't see the resulting effect.
Yeah.
Right.
Let's talk a little bit more about Sylvia real quick. What do you guys make of her, aside from her being terrible?
She's terrifying. That was absolutely that was probably the worst part of the episode.
I mean,
it was good, but like she was really good, but she was like.
I think we're about there. We're about there to that as that chaos built and that crescendo, which was incredibly well done, and had me just like one of those things where I wasn't on the edge of my seat because I was sitting on my bed, but I certainly was like holding my breath, like what's about to happen.
And then they double down on it after they take her finger, and then Toby puts his hand in the drain, like, oh, here we go again. But like they just give you that little bit of that was so good.
Man, but like I thought Sylvia was really interesting. I know that everybody is kind of like supposed to be, who's with the cult, right? Or who's dangerous and who isn't, and I don't and these sort of random women that continue to be brought, Sylvia, and we've got Vera, and sort of
this
manipulation by women,
right,
and both of it being like these two men that Leanne had sort of flirted with in some way, shape, or form, but now they both re-enter into the story with different girlfriends, not Leanne and not, so I thought that was interesting too.
And it's like different reactions, not different reactions, or like different people. Like I was trying to figure out if like Sylvia was like influenced by like the energy of the house, or like maybe Leanne pushed her rage up to a point where it was like unreasonable. Like that was like legitimate. Like,
I tend to think that was pure Sylvia.
It seems like that's how she was all the time. True. I guess when you're thinking about like,
in her element.
Seeing how Toby is in general, I could see him being like kind of neutral and maybe putting up with something that he's not necessarily aware is very abusive. So maybe she's just like that, but it seemed so pointed and like not exaggerated. People do reach those heights, but it was very intense.
She told Leanne to watch the fuck out, get the fuck out of my way.
I meant more that last bit when she was like screaming, like just screaming. Like, Toby. That was real. I mean,
we skipped over the little interlude between Toby and Leanne in the alleyway when Leanne is like, why
talking to herself
like that? What?
No, it seems like she's talking to herself more than talking to him.
Oh, right. But that's what I was going to say, is that that's another speech she gives where it's I forget what the other one was. From last week when Dorothy was talking to Julian, saying, "Oh, you're not there yet. You're not ready to hear this yet. I understand." I had postulated that was Dorothy speaking to herself about whether, not ready to acknowledge what happened to Jericho, original. But that because she says she's trying to hurt you. She's all you want is to live a normal life. Again, that word normal. And everybody keeps thinking that they can just do whatever they want to you, awful things, and that you're always just going to beat it, and it's not fair. So that really seemed like Leanne speaking to her current situation and her frustration and anger. But so when Sylvia's really ratcheting it up and she's at her, apex of no one's ever going to hire an idiot like you. You're fucking worthless. You're an idiot. You're, just saying the worst things possible to Toby, screaming them at him. That, and, that sent that sends Leanne over the edge. And I imagine that was Leanne hearing her mother when Leanne kept failing at the choreography of the dance or the pageants. I don't think that Leanne had anything to do with what happened to Sylvia. It really seemed to be a comedy of errors.
I know.
I think it did, but you have a point. It's a little less harder. It's not as easy to connect it to anything.
To pinpoint.
It's not as easy to pinpoint as it is
it certainly wasn't
with Dorothy.
But...
Like I was pretty sure she did do it. I just couldn't see other than being there at the time. With all that focus.
I know that Leanne, when her emotions are high and negative, that's when things tend to happen.
Right.
And she's certainly in that space.
Mm-hmm.
But it didn't seem as if she caused anything to happen. I mean, the Jericho's lunch happened to spill because someone knocked it over, the puree. Sylvia happened to slip in it and just happened to be by that awful taffy tool. And it just happened to catch on the ring that she wears on that hand.
That's a lot of coincidences.
Yeah, no, I'm pretty sure. I'm trying to go back and see again.
I don't see how Leanne could have caused it. I mean, maybe she caused her to lose her balance. It just doesn't seem like in style with Leanne's other power moments.
Yeah. I felt like the stuff spilling was what she did. That was
like she started that whole chain of events.
Catalyst. Yeah, like that happened. And it was just sort of something that was set in motion.
Because I remember them showing like her cutting the vegetables and stuff like that. And I was like, oh, here we go.
Yeah, I put my hands over my eyes. Like, I don't need to see fingers cut off.
Yeah.
Oh, it was so good though. They don't really show it.
When she passed out, she looked at it. Ooh.
Mm-hmm.
I certainly thought that the ring, I know I've been so focused on the ring that we've clearly seen on Julian and on his father. Obviously that wasn't the ring that came to play here, but in terms of comparing, if you're able to get a good look at Julian's ring, it's in the shape of an oval. And it has like a little dot, a little, stone on either end of the oval. One of the stones is like a reddish purple. And Sylvia's ring has two opposing stones, so it's still there is a similarity there. And she also wore it on the same hand and the same finger, and they brought attention to that. So, it was talked about the fact that she's wearing it on her right hand. Had they not mentioned that, I probably would just say, okay, I was totally off base on this. But when they mentioned it, the right hand, and I went back and I'm looking, and, that's where Julian and his father also wear their rings. I thought perhaps there is a connection there to whatever organization that Julian and his father are a part of that we don't know about yet. Perhaps that's where she comes from, perhaps that she's a part of that too. So who knows? But anyway, that's the way I was able to tie it in somehow, or at least hypothesize that maybe she isn't from the cult, but maybe she was still sent there, because she also says to Sean that sometimes people don't realize how much help they need until it's too late. So I that seemed to be very pointed and very, kind of a strange thing for her to say directly to Sean. So that was another thing that made me think that perhaps she was there for a reason.
She seemed very desperate to get that job, and it seemed more than just, I want to work for this TV chef. It was more like, I have to get hired because that's my job, is to get hired to be a part of this household so I can spy or work on behalf of Papa Turner.
Right. Yeah.
So I'm with you on that. Something I noticed about the ring was that when we see Dorothy, at the crescendo of all that tension building and the the climax, in the aftermath, when Dorothy's listening to that song again, and she's in the attic and she's playing with the ring. And at first she sets it down on the shelf with the child's block, almost like a trophy, because block, you see a giant D, and then on the side an E, and it made me think of Dorothy, you know.
They also really zero in on the timer, on the kitchen timer, on the egg timer.
Yeah, there's a lot of that too.
Yeah,
well, that's always like an image of like tension and like a ticking, like, oh look, the time is running out. So I might just like heighten that visually for like reinforcement of that.
The tension. Well, sorry, back to the block and the ring. It's just the idea of trophies. Like I got rid of Sylvia.
Oh, right, the trophy, yes.
Now I have this cool ring.
Yeah.
And I have Dorothy at home where she belongs.
No, Anthony and I said the same thing. He was like, is that a trophy?
Like we're doing trophies now?
Yeah, and I said, oh my God, I swear I said the same thing. I thought, oh, we're going full psychopath. Okay.
And then that dance.
The dance.
Intuitive engagement dance is what I wrote in my.
What was your? What did you make of the dance? And because that one, a lot of times I feel like I'm like, oh, I get what this, but this one kind of, I was a little not confused, but I was wondering what that was really supposed to signify.
It's interesting because I remember she says earlier that she doesn't dance, and then suddenly she's got this. I don't know. It's hard to. I could understand like being able to dance and then being embarrassed, so like not wanting to. So maybe she's just like, like, no, I can't. So I won't with you, but like I will on my own.
I'm alone. What did you think?
Right. When she dances with her mom, she's being constantly critiqued and under pressure, like the timer, but, under pressure and put down and then starved and dehydrated and not allowed to rest. But then when she can do it for herself, unwatched, unjudged, she's good and she's free, and it's again interpretive.
Right.
It seemed like a very not joyful, but a real expression of internal emotional release of expression. Well, it's something a little weird otherworldly about it with her hand and her arm.
Right.
The hand that had the ring on it.
Like very dancey.
Like she was pushing it away from herself and then pulling it close,
or she was scared of it. Sometimes it seemed like she was sort of scared of whatever power she felt like it had.
Well, that's what I was going for. That it was like she's flirting with the idea of what it would be like to be a wife and a woman, but also, let the power flow through your fingertips, the whole, power, and use your voice, the mural. She used her power to get what she wanted and is a little afraid of that. And then the cult members looking up in awe almost. And she wasn't hiding herself the way she normally does. She felt powerful and free.
What did you make of their reactions as looking up at her?
But they seem to be having tears.
It seemed like a position of like maybe reverence, or I don't know.
Yeah.
It didn't seem evil or sinister. It was more like, I don't really know. It was like a warm feeling to me. It seemed beyond that. I'm not sure yet. I don't even know that they could necessarily see her dancing. It's just that maybe they knew. I don't know.
Yeah. It was a beautiful end of that episode, between that juxtaposition of her almost like coming into her power, and then that juxtaposed with Dorothy feeling like she has lost much of her power and and doesn't really know what's going on.
Right.
And this is the second episode in a row where she's sort of falling apart, and saying, I don't know what's wrong with me. I don't know what's going on. Something's wrong.
Right.
I think this is all, I think we've been saying each week that we think that the season is probably going to end with Dorothy finally learning about what really happened with Jericho, and we're waking up to that. And I think that each episode kind of points more and more to that.
Well, she's got a lot more time on her hands now, right?
That's for sure.
So I think that'll give her time to think and do some questioning and investigating, and or maybe
I know
just
there was some chatter too on Reddit about why on earth would her career be over because she lactated on camera.
Right.
That's ridiculous. And what were y'all's thoughts on that?
It's just that I think it's her vanity,
right?
Really, more than anything, because like, other than it being embarrassing and probably kind of hard to get over with the time, with how I guess I don't. I mean, I can't imagine people. Well, no, people are pretty vicious. I guess it would be like an internet thing, like, oh, look at this. That
Well, yeah,
happened.
I think
This
that's what she
lady.
meant.
Like, I don't think she's gonna get fired or anything.
No,
It's
of
just
course not.
maybe
Yeah.
she won't want to show her face that way again as readily, at least for a time.
Or they'll keep nudging her out, because I think she already felt like, oh,
She's pushed out with that other woman. Yeah,
like she's getting the serious stuff and I'm getting the fluff pieces now.
because
right. So this will just be like another thing where she'll get sort of backburnered or put on smaller stuff, and obviously she's not gonna get fired for that.
It's another sacrifice for Jericho.
Yeah. So I don't think that was necessarily literal so much as it was just like you said. Yeah, I agree with you, Aunt. Her vanity, and also just a continuing of.
Yeah, we might not see her back again. I mean, working at least this season. I don't know, depending on how long they take it to draw out.
Or she'll seclude herself. She won't want to go back. Yeah.
Another thing about that, I hadn't noticed this, but they said that with the news reports that the I guess logo was different for the news channel. So maybe that signifies like a renewal of like or a moving on from like the older. It looked like a little more.
It's a good observation. I hadn't seen that.
It looked like 70s kind of, or 60s.
Really?
Yeah, it was like a silver and blue, like I can't think of what it was before, but I think it did alter. But sometimes people just change things too, like maybe just a minor detail. But that could symbolize anything really.
Yeah. Well, it was an amazing episode. Do you guys have anything else you want to say about it before we wrap up for this one? I know it was a long one, but there was a lot to talk about.
Yeah, I really enjoyed it. It was fun to talk about too.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, this was probably like my favorite yet, as opposed to in addition to like last week. It's just, it keeps getting better.
It does. I agree.
When Dorothy comes home dejected, they've got that opera piece playing, another neat, musical note or audible note. And Leanne's walking in kind of slow motion down the hallway with Jericho towards Dorothy. And she just, enfolds Dorothy in an embrace. And it's like this unit back to Dorothy's finally come home and she's going to stay this time.
You're right. I can't believe we didn't talk about this. Yes, that whole sequence was unbelievable.
Right? And that which ends with Leanne sending Dorothy upstairs to the nursery and closing that childproof gate behind her, like locked in a tower.
Well, she's back in the house.
That's a great observation. Yeah, she got her home. I felt like that was what really cemented for me too, that lactation debacle was caused by Leanne.
Yeah,
what she wanted was for Dorothy to come home, and then that way they could envelop her in the love of the family, and it would also further make her feel like, okay, this is where I need to be. And then I also thought it was interesting how, so we had these men standing there kind of like, oh, what do we do? What do we do? This thing happened and we can't relate to it because that doesn't happen. What do we do? And Leanne just kind of very swiftly goes to her like a mother would to her child, and just kind of folds her in. And it's like, and it was also just a moment for me of like women, to care, that it was meant to be like, you guys can't relate to this, and I'm a woman and I've got this. I can handle this.
So,
when she came home, you mean? It felt, I mean, I guess, that's probably part of it too. It just seems so much more sinister, but I guess that's just how I read it, considering the whole of the
Well, I think it was sinister too.
episode. Yeah.
But like
But
looking in
but
terms
like
of where
but
she wanted,
right.
like the how she wanted it to look and feel for Dorothy,
Hmm.
right? Is that I'm the only one that can comfort you in this moment because I know
Right.
what you're going through, you know.
Right.
And then leaving the two men at the bottom and
Hmm.
sending again, we have Dorothy, like I know you mentioned it, Liz, a minute ago, saying it was kind of like a tower and she was locked in, and there's
Hmm.
an imprisonment element to it, and I think
Right.
that's absolutely right. But I also looked at it as Dorothy ascending into heaven with her child, you know, and this sort of motherly ascent into that, and leaving these
Hmm.
men who
Mm.
the whole episode were down at the bottom of those stairs in that darkness, you know, and represented sin and darkness, and the women and the child going upstairs, and you know, where it's light and heavenly, and sort of just further a separation in the home between good and bad, or good and evil, or whatever, darkness and light, and all that.
I
Right.
never thought of it that way, and that's great. I agree. Oh, I'm so sad.
Uh,
I feel so bad for Dorothy in that moment.
Oh, I know.
yeah, for
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah.
And contrast the embrace that Leanne gives Dorothy when she walks in with Sean and Dorothy then sitting on the floor in the nursery at the very, very end. And they're just like two kind of sad people thinking, what have we done? What have we built? And what do we have? And
Right.
why aren't we happy?
Mm-hmm.
Like,
Yeah.
what more do we need, and like, what is it all worth?
Mm-hmm.
And finally away from Leanne for a moment.
Hmm.
Yeah. Because we haven't really seen them, just the two of them, bonding in the ways that we used to.
Right.
So
Outside of like artificial or
Right.
like some really hectic, busy thing that's like
Exactly.
makes everything else secondary.
Because there were moments in earlier seasons, right, where, you know, she's in the bath and he's sitting on the toilet and they're
Hmm.
talking, or they're in their bedroom talking with one another.
Yeah, those
But
like
then,
comfortable little private moments that people have, like.
right. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah. That crescendo and the ending and the opera, you know, it was just, all of it was really
Beautiful,
stunning. Beautiful.
really.
Mm-hmm.
so well done.
Yeah. Well, you guys, I think that brings us to the end of this episode.
Really, have we covered it all?
I'm sure we left something out, but you know,
We'll get back to it. There's always,
we'll get back to it.
we
Exactly.
could do some.
Well,
And we
thank
hope you guys enjoyed listening as much as we enjoyed talking.
Oh, sure.
Yeah, we want to thank everybody for listening, and if you made it all the way through, thank you. You're our people.
Yeah, that's right. We're in it for the, who else
And
can get 3 hours out of 26 minutes?
right? Oh my gosh. Okay.
Just about.
And yeah, we did. I know we're just getting going, but we're hopefully going to keep putting some fun little videos up on TikTok too. And so I hope you'll follow us on there if you're on TikTok and Twitter. And we're just trying to get it out there and give some content, whether it's nice long stuff like this or short little things to whet your appetite. We just love the show and love talking with you guys about it. And so
Oh, yeah.
please don't forget to subscribe to the channel. If you want to get notifications, make sure you hit the bell so you get those notifications. And yeah, we will see you guys for the next episode. And all right. Thank
Good
you,
night.
Liz. Thank you, Ant.
Thank you.
And this is Servant Decoded. We will see you guys next week.
Thanks, y'all. Bye.